Stas23 here. In today's knife therapy, I have the CMB Knives Predator. This knife comes in at $48, and I do believe this is my first CMB made knife. Could be wrong, but this is the only one I remember. Let's get the quick specs out of the way. You have a total length of 7.87 inches, so it's a medium to larger knife for some people. You have a 3.44 inch blade, a grip area from here to the very back of 3.7 inches. Handle scale thickness of 0.53 and a width in the pocket of 1.35 inches. Blade stock thickness of a pretty chunky 0.14 inches, and the behind the edge thickness on my particular knife ranges from around 14 to 15 thousandths, sharpened at 22 degrees per side. Man, I absolutely love this drop point blade. I love the fact that the point is below the pivot. It just makes it easier to do those drag cuts like that. And when you're cutting on a flat surface, you still have a good bit of blade that's actually touching the surface. So it's probably one of my favorite blade shapes as of right now, because the more knives I test, the more I find that I like a good drop point, especially one that's either in line with the pivot or below the pivot just a little bit. My particular knife has a bead blasted stonewash finish. But there are several different variations you can get. You can get it in a satin blade, you can get it in a black blade, and there may be others. There's tons of different handle scale options. There was just too many to be popping up on the screen. You have a nice top swedge that goes all the way down to that tip, leaving it nice and needle-like for piercing and doing those fine detail tasks that I was just talking about. You don't have any jimping up top, but I didn't find a need for it because you have a nice flat spot to rest your thumb. You got an excellently done sharpening notch cut out right here. It's going to give you a lot of sharpening life before it starts to widen up in the back. Very nicely done. On some sites, it lists this as a hollow grind, and unless it's a very shallow hollow grind, mine, I'm pretty sure is a flat grind. Let me show you. There's a straight edge right here. And there may be a little bit in the middle. I can't really tell. I did shine some light. So it might be a very shallow hollow. But regardless, it's ground nice and thin. And they got a, decently thin edge bevel there. The blade steel is a D2. So it should perform pretty darn good. Why don't we find out? Before I started the test, I thought about sharpening the knife up because I used it a decent bit before the testing. However, I stropped it up and the edge felt really good after that, so I went with it. Right away, it was slicing very effortlessly through this cardboard. It felt really good, and I'm hoping it would hold that edge later down the road. Now we move on to the piece of pine 2x4 so we can test out the ergos and see how that edge is biting. I was a little concerned because there is a little hump at the bottom of the handle that, if you had the wrong size hands, your hands could be sitting on that little hump. And whenever it kind of was uncomfortable, but I was able to maneuver around it. The thickness and the scales were nice, and other than that, it had no hot spots. Man, that low tip makes it so easy to do detail work, dragging that tip through material. And the thinness near that tip it's really nice and thin in that area, and it was nice and sharp, so it's just breezing through all this material. Nothing really gave it much of a challenge. The knife still had very good bite to it, and I'm super impressed. It was blasting through all the materials, and I tested 5 knives before this, and it did better than every single knife I tested. And this is after an edge that's been used and then just dropped back a little bit. Blast through. I was like, wow, whenever I was cutting this corner cardboard, because usually I get a good bit of resistance. Not with this knife. It literally felt really good. The pinch grip was comfortable, easy on this flat cutting surface, and this 12-ounce Diddum, absolutely no problem. Really good bite, passing through it without an issue whatsoever. Now we move on to the 1/2 inch twisted sisal rope. And right away, it was push cutting through the rope and was really easily getting through it without a whole bunch of downward pressure. Flat cuts felt good, like I said before, and I just felt really locked in. The little bit thicker of a handle, I think it's 0.53 inches thick, really help out whenever you're doing these pinch grips and stuff like that. I expected the blade shape to do well, but it just kept on surprising me more and more as I went through. Figured I would cut the rest of this rope and see if it would make it all the way. And for the most part, I could still feel that edge biting, so I figured it would make it all the way. Ended up making 43 cuts, and the edge still felt good. When we're done with the testing, I will test out that edge just to see what it's like after all that testing, and like I did before as well. Well, I hope you enjoyed that cutting. I enjoyed doing it for y'all. Let's check out the edge after that cutting and doing the cutting I did before that testing. Yeah, that's what I thought. Still has a really good working edge and got a better edge than some knives do out of the box. Let's see. I can do a decent S-curve there. It's not super clean, but I think that is excellent for a $50 knife. The only thing I did notice whenever I was doing the wood cutting to test the ergos is that you have this deep choil right here and this hump right there. And there's no sharp spots to speak of, but the large choils like that can be a problem for some people. As you can see, my two fingers kind of fit there, and these two fingers will rest in that wrapped out spot right there. But sometimes this finger was landing in that spot, and it made it a little uncomfortable. I call it a minor hot spot, but nothing to where I had to stop what I was doing and put on gloves or anything. So, take it for what you will, and it's going to depend on your hand size also. I have a medium-sized hand, wear a medium to large glove. Now let's check out the deployment and the action. It's riding on ceramic ball bearings, and it's got an Axis style lock. Once you pull this bar lock back, I mean, ridiculously smooth and very snappy. The Omega springs on the bar lock are pretty stiff. They're pretty strong springs. Let's see if you can see the nice suck in right there. And it requires a little bit of pressure to pull back, definitely more than a Benchmade. And, this is probably the strongest I've had, which is, good thing for the most part. But after a while, it can be a little uncomfortable for me. Probably not for the average person, though. That said, the action is extremely smooth and extremely snappy. It's a nice and fidgety knife. You can use the bar lock to open and close it as well. Look at that, see? Absolutely no resistance once that pressure's off the bar lock. All right, now let's check out this handle. Your hardware, T8 on the pivot. I haven't taken this apart yet, and it's still that smooth. You have T6 on the body and T6 on the pocket clip. I really wish it would have been all T8, but I'm okay with it at $50. You do have a deep carry pocket clip that is tip up right hand carry only. Let's check it out in the pocket. You have a good bit of ramp up there that should fit most pant lips. It goes in and out of the pocket nicely and pretty much disappears in the pocket. It does hug the side of the pocket, and there's no flipper tab or anything to get in the way if you put your hand in there or put your phone or anything else. All right, let's open it up and take a look at the inside. You have internal milling on the show side and on the opposite side scale as well, the stainless steel liners. The liners are flush with the micarta scales, and the scales have been nicely contoured on the red micarta. The micarta looks nice. It has a nice soft texture to it, and it's nice and grippy there. Love micarta for that reason. You have a black G10 backspacer that is flush with the liners. And now let's check out the lockup. Like I said, you have some pretty strong spring tension on the Omega springs. So this lockup is rock solid. No side to side. I can't muscle any up and down at all. Sometimes with those bar locks, you can kind of muscle a little bit of kind of rock from that bar kind of sliding on the back of that tang. But being that this one has a little bit stiffer spring, you don't get any of that whatsoever. Being that this knife is a little chunky, you got a little bit chunky blade stock and a little bit of chunky thickness in here. It is a little weighty. Let's check it out on the scale. First off, in grams, 130.4 grams and 3.599 ounces. So it's not a featherweight, and I didn't have any issues carrying it, but if you're somebody looking for lightweight knives, this might not be for you. The blade to handle ratio on this knife is excellent. It's pretty much 1-to-1, and this backspacer goes up so you don't catch that tip. They did an excellent job there. Let's get some quick size comparisons. First up, we have the Ontario Rat Model 1 and 2. It's right in the middle of those two. Next up, we have the Sencut Sachi and the Reich P801. These two are excellent size references. And lastly, we have the Kubey Momentum and the Kaiser Begleiter Tanto. These are also excellent size references. All right, for my nitpicks and complaints, first of all, for me, the pressure on this is a little strong. I would have loved to see it dialed back just a hair, but that said, it's just a nitpick. I know most people would like that because you want that snappier action. Also, the little hump in the large choil right there can be problematic, depending on where your hands land out. Because if your fingers don't fit in the middle of that, then you're definitely going to be on that. And when you're pushing hard into something, it could be a little uncomfortable. So, it just depends. I didn't really see a huge problem with it because, like I said, these two fingers, for the most part, fit good in there. I just got to make sure that's where they're at. Lastly, they did a good job with insetting the pocket clip into the micarta. I wish that they would have countersunk those screws. However, I didn't notice anything getting caught on it. I usually notice that it'll get caught on the lip of the pocket clip before it gets caught on those domed screws, because the domed screws kind of allow it to slide over it. All right, my final thoughts and overall value at $48, $49, $50. I think it's an excellent, excellent knife, one that I can highly recommend. It performed outstanding. It's got a nice, smooth action. I think it looks nice. They did a lot of things well. They did a good job of grinding this thing nice and thin. Don't love that, but, it wasn't a deal breaker for me because of the way my hands were, landing on it. So overall, I love the knife. Definitely won't be my last CMB made knife. Hopefully I can check out more in the later future, and hopefully they're all like this one. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day, and I will see y'all on the next one.